you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down.
Hey everybody, welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indie podcast. My name is Eugene Driscoll of valleyindy.org. That's a local news website, online newspaper, if you will, that covers Ansonia, Derby, and Seymour, Connecticut in the great lower Naugatuck Valley. So my guest for this Navel Gazing is Valerie Knight-DiGangi. She's the program officer with the Valley Community Foundation. I interview her about a bunch of grants that are available to area nonprofits and beyond. So take a minute to listen. The Valley Community Foundation does a ton of good in our area. Then the second part of the broadcast, I thought I would play the audio from this week's Ansonia Tax Board meeting. There was a bit of a political squabble that broke out. I wrote a story on it. It's titled Political Spat Over Ansonia Tax Board's Composition. Basically, there were complaints from two Democrats from the audience who were listening on Zoom to this tax board meeting that the board is supposed to be 7 members and it's only 5, and that's there should be additional Democrats appointed to the board based on the city charter. And the Democrats are right, from what I understand. There's more to it than that, but you're going to have to listen or read the story. Again, it's valleyindy.org if you want to check that out. So again, first half of this broadcast, Valerie Knight-DiGangi from the Valley Community Foundation. Second half of the broadcast, audio from Monday's Ansonia Tax Board. Hey, so like I said, joining me for this very special episode of Navel Gazing, the Valley Indie podcast, is none other. If you're a longtime Valley podcast listener, you're going to know this name and voice. It's Valerie Knight-DiGangi. She's the program officer with the Valley Community Foundation in Derby, and she is here today to talk about grant opportunities available to Valley nonprofits from the VCF. How are you, Valerie?
Well, Eugene, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And if people don't know, in my opinion, and I know reporters aren't supposed to give opinions, but VCF is one of those backbone organizations of the Valley. They do so much, and it's all for the greater good of the lower Naugatuck Valley and really beyond. So it's really my pleasure to have you back.
Eugene, you just touched on one of the phrases in our tagline, which is for good forever for the Valley, right? And this is something that we have been honored to be able to support the Valley in so many different ways over the years. And again, part of the reason why I'm here today is to talk about how we can connect people who need grant funding with the grants that we have available through the Community Foundation.
And we had been talking off camera right before I hit record, but let's start with the very basics, Valerie. What is the Valerie? Sorry, I just named an organization after you. What is the VCF to people who may not know?
You know, it's so funny. Somebody did that to me yesterday too. They called it the Valerie Community Foundation. I was like, wow, this is 2 days in a row, Eugene. Maybe the planets are aligning somewhere, and I need to hear something about that. But all kidding aside, the Valley Community Foundation's mission is to really help to support and make the Valley a better place for everyone who lives and works here, and to really continue to grow the endowment that we have in order to get funding out to those who are in need all across the board, individuals, families, nonprofits, all of that, to support all of the work that is done throughout the Valley to make the Valley a better place.
And from what I understand, the Valley Community Foundation is basically a major supporter. We're talking monetarily. Groups, including the Online Journalism Project, which publishes my publication, come to the VCF, fill out applications, and apply for grants. Is that essentially it in layman's terms?
Absolutely. And let's talk about that right now. One of the major processes that we have is our responsive grants process, which we do in conjunction with, in partnership with, our partner in philanthropy, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. That process is open to nonprofits that are either here or serving people here in the Valley. And for this responsive grants process, as has been in the past couple of years due to the pandemic, our focus for responsive grants is on general operating support, or GOS, as we call it. It is to help organizations like yours, like others in the Valley, to help do their job and to help keep the lights on, and to keep all of the staff that they're working with and the clients that they're serving. The grant is due on February 24th. The application is online. And if there are any questions, people can certainly reach out to me at any point through my email or to call the office, and we will have some conversation about it.
And for people not familiar, the website is valleyfoundation.org. I'm looking at it on my screen. This is audio only, but it's very easy to access. You go to valleyfoundation.org. You can click on Impacting the Valley right at the top, and there's Apply for a Grant. And then once you do that, it brings up all the different grants that are available, and they're a lot. And you said the responsive grants is the one we're talking about. And this is a multi-year one. What is there a maximum dollar amount? I sometimes get confused between Valley Needs and Opportunities and your responsive grants, which are two different grant applications. Which one is responsive?
These are great questions, Eugene. So the responsive grant process, there is no limit. However, our average grant is somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 per year. And as you noted, it can be multi-year support. Typically, we would consider, 1, 2, or 3 years worth of support for an organization. So it is really all about, and we tell this for all of the grant processes, not just the responsive grant process, it is all about looking at your budget, how VCF might fit into your budget as a whole, and exactly asking for what you need. Right. So people often come and say, well, I should ask for this amount because I know I'm not going to get it and it'll be cut down. Absolutely not. We have made our grant process, especially the responsive grants in conjunction with the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, one that is truly responsive and reflective of the needs that an individual organization has. So the difference between responsive grants, which you have focused on, and then something else that you brought up, which is needs and opportunities, is that with our responsive grant process, there is a finite deadline. The grants are due into the foundation by, as I said, February 24th. The needs and opportunities is a rolling grant application. It does have an upper limit of $250 to up to $10,000. And that, as I said, is rolling. It is something that any organization can apply to, that they need a specific funding source for a need or an opportunity that has come up at their organization, and that they really need to be able to have that smaller amount of money for, that can help them with whatever that they are seeking that support for.
And so the responsive grant, you've said several times, that's February 24th. People should keep that in mind. This is like the Big Kahuna grant. This is one that can be over a few years. Big Kahuna, all right, that's not exactly a correct term, but it helps me remember. So if I am a nonprofit, and maybe there's a new nonprofit out there that isn't familiar with this process, and it's February 9th, and the application is due February 24th, what are some things they can do to prepare to apply? Where can they get information about, okay, what do I need for this? Is there a video I can watch? Is there anything like that out there? A how-to, I guess.
Absolutely. We have been doing a series of technical assistance workshops for people and have been recording them, just as you're doing right now for your audience, right? So that people can gain access to that information, even if they weren't able to join us for the live presentation. So there are 2 up on the website right now, the Grant Seekers webinar and our Nuts and Bolts webinar. Grant Seeker has all of the information for all of the grant processes for both the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and the Valley Community Foundation. It is more of a general overview of all of the offerings that we provide. The nuts and bolts webinar is one that I did specifically with Jackie Downing from the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, where we go into a bit more detail about what we are looking for. We obviously are not giving people the exact answers to questions to put on their application and say, hey, this is what Jackie and Valerie have said and all good to go. This is now why you should give us money, but more about what they can be thinking about as they're applying. So that gets to your question of what should I do? Where should I go? What are the resources that are available? One of the things that Jackie and I really try to do in Nuts and Bolts is to provide additional information, other links and other data sources that people can use to support the reason why they are coming to us for funding.
And again, it's valleyfoundation.org. Anyone out there listening, that's where all this information is available. Click around. You can find it. If I found it, you can find it, because I'm sort of lost on the web all the time. So those are the two grants that I'm most familiar with, Valerie. But I did notice, because it's been a while since you've been on this broadcast, it's been a while since I sort of went into the VCF website. There are a lot of additional grants at this point. Before we move on, is there anything else you wanted to say about the deadline coming up February 24th, or anything else you want to stress about the responsive grant?
I think that if anybody at this point is listening and they are considering applying for responsive grant, that the best information and the best advice I can give is twofold. One of them is to work on the application sooner rather than later. Do not wait until the very last minute on the deadline day, because invariably, Eugene, as you can probably imagine, people are cranking on getting that application done, and then either their computer crashes or there's an internet issue or something happens, right? I mean, it's just technology in today's world. So the sooner you can work on it, the better. And the other thing that I would say, and this is actually grant writing in general, is to have someone who is not close to the work that you do read your application. Because there's a lot of jargon that we in our individual nonprofit organizations use that is really very specific to the work that we do, that someone who is out there and maybe reading this application and considering it for funding is going to say, what was that? I'm not really sure about what that alphabet acronym stood for, right? And, the one thing to keep in mind too about responsive grants is that at this stage, this is a read-only process. So it's not like you're going to get a call from the Valley Community Foundation or the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and say, hey, could you explain this a little bit more to us? Can you tell us what is up with that? Because, again, we get so close to what we're doing, we are oftentimes just going to gloss right over something that somebody may say, wow, that sounds pretty interesting, but it's not really coming across through what you have shared. So those are my kind of two bits of information before we move on to the other grants.
And of course, people couldn't see, but I relate too well to, if you leave it for the last second, or it's not an overwhelming thing. I don't want to scare people if you've never applied before, but I mean, in my case, there might be information you need, a tax form or something like that you need from another person. And then that's where you're better off. If you're listening, just start it right now. How about, and I was going to move on to some other grants that I see are available, but in terms of what happens when an organization hands in the grant February 24th? Who, not specifically who, but who decides who gets what, for lack of a better question?
It's a great question. So all of the applications are funneled into our joint portal that we share with the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. And the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven staff goes through, processes them all, separates them out into three categories. One category is totally Greater New Haven. One category is totally Valley. And then there are the organizations that serve both, right? We consider those to be partner organizations because they may serve individuals in both of our regions. And once that process is done, then it goes through an entire review process, Eugene, from basically the end of February until the grants are made in July. They are reviewed, they are vetted, they are just really gone through to see how they fit with the answers to the questions and all of that. And then the analysis are provided, analysis are written of those applications. They are provided to the respective boards, the Valley Community Foundation, VCF board, or the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, TCF board, right? And then there is a lot of deliberation that goes on both sides for the board, and the board makes the final recommendation. This year, it will be in July.
In July. And again, I don't mean to keep saying, but valleyfoundation.org for people. Now, I remember last year, I think it was, Valerie, there was talk, maybe it was at the annual meeting of either the New Haven Foundation or the Valley Foundation, but there was a push this year, a specific mission from what I remember, to touch upon and fund things that promote equity in the Naugatuck Valley and beyond. Can you talk about that a little bit if you're willing?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. So there are several new grants that we are sharing with the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, and I'm going to kind of go through them one by one. The first one is the Racial Equity and Creative Healing Through the Arts, or REACH program. That grant is available for between $5,000 and $20,000 per year for 2 years. That grant just came out, the application came out on February 7th, and it's due on May 2nd, right? And it will be reviewed by an arts council, not an arts council, a committee that is comprised of artists who will be able to weigh in on each of the grants that are submitted, and then make recommendations to both VCF and TCF about which should be funded. There is also something called the BIPOC, which is the Black, Indigenous, People of Color cohort. There is money available for individuals for up to $15,000 a year for 2 years to participate in a unique leadership program that is focusing on developing leadership skills for people of color. And there's a whole part that is working in conjunction with the University of Connecticut. It's up on both of our websites, so you can certainly feel free to get some more information about that. It is specifically for nonprofit professionals of color, both in Greater New Haven and the Valley. And the other program that we've actually been working on for the last couple of years and have included an equity focus in is our consultant support program. And what that is to build capacity for an organization for a very small and finite project, and includes some work on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, or DEI and B. Those are the acronyms. See, we have all of them, those acronyms, whatever field that we are in. That is available, again, for organizations that are starting to work on their DE and I and B exploration, their journey. It may be to fund a consultant to come in and to work with them about their board or their staff or their hiring or lots of different issues, right? And the consultant support program in general has provided tremendous amount of capacity building over the last couple of years for organizations, both in Greater New Haven and the Valley, to be able to, just give, as I said, that finite support. There are a group of consultants that are working with both of our foundations that have been willing to work for a set hourly rate, and we can provide between 10 and 15 hours worth of support for a consultant to come in. We're not going to have them come in and do your entire strategic plan or redo your website. But if there is some piece that an organization really needs, either with capacity building or the equity issue, that's a great program for them to apply to.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see Valley Community Foundation and the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven expand and get into these different areas. It's definitely something new, and people should check out valleyfoundation.org. The other thing, Valerie, I wanted to ask about, we had done a bunch of recordings during this pandemic, which I think it started in like 1909. It feels like we've been in this for 1,000 years. But one of the concerns, or one of the issues at the very start of the pandemic, was the impact. I mean, obviously there were many issues, but specifically on nonprofits, annual meetings, fundraisers, all those things were canceled. So groups that were already struggling had revenue streams cut off. Then they had extra costs because of having to deal with the pandemic. And you, as somebody who has their finger on the pulse of nonprofits in the Lower Valley, how are we doing?
Eugene, it's been this, as you know, and this has been life in general for all of us for the last two, almost, starting into this third year of the pandemic. There's been ebbs and flows, right? There has been times when we've said, hey, we're making headway and we're doing really great, and then boom, a variant comes up or something comes up to kind of put a kibosh on some of the events that again were planned, replanned, and it's been challenging. But I think that one of the things that has been just so apparent over the last several years is actually what the theme of our last year annual report and annual meeting was, which is the year of resilience, right? And I think that resilience continues today. People are just so committed to making sure that no one is falling through the cracks in the Valley. And the nonprofits and the healthcare workers, the emergency folks, everybody, and it's just working so hard to ensure that those safety nets are being held together. And we have been so fortunate to work with the nonprofits to listen to what their needs are, to listen to what the clients' needs are out in the community, and really help to provide that funding support so that they can continue to do their work. And one of the things that we are so excited about this year, and I haven't touched on yet, is I don't want to say expansion of, but certainly our community grants program, which is really geared to organizations that are not nonprofit, are not 501c3 by the tax code, are folks that are doing really awesome work in their neighborhood to make the Valley a better place. And there is funding available through the community grants program for organizations who have either 2 or less full-time equivalent employees that are volunteer-based, that are really kind of grassroots, that are banding together and just saying, hey, we're in this together. We want to continue to make the Valley a better place, and let's do some great work. We have up to $2,500 available in the community grants program. It is due, again, that has a deadline. It is due on March 4th. The application is up on our website. And to make it even more accessible this year, we've eliminated the budget form. You just need to come up with, show us on an Excel spreadsheet what your budget is for that and how you can use that money to help make the Valley even stronger. So, I think one of the things that I can share in general is that people are just even as tired and as, maybe as frustrated as they have been about the pandemic, that there is a hope and a resilience. And if that's one message I can share out with everybody, it's that is absolutely alive and well here in this region.
Yeah, and I did hear we're recording this on Wednesday, February 9th. So today is the first day of the legislative session up in Hartford at our state capitol. And I heard that TEAM is going to be specifically mentioned. TEAM Inc., which is a community action agency and does a ton of good here in the lower Naugatuck Valley, is going to be specifically mentioned, I guess, in some way today. So good for them. And they're an example of heroes and resilience and everything you just talked about. And I know you work hand in hand a lot of times with David Morgan and the whole crew over there. At TEAM.
Absolutely. And the work that they have done with providing childcare and energy assistance, and now it's tax season, tax assistance to people who need it, and certainly with housing and everything else that they do such an amazing job, as do all of the nonprofits in the Valley. They are just so hardworking, and kudos to David and his team at TEAM. And to all of the nonprofits here in this region that, are really banding together, that are seeing ways that they can not only do their individual work, but can collaborate in order to share resources, be as cost effective in the work that they do. And we certainly applaud that and look at that to show how the dollars that we can get out as a foundation can help support those efforts.
I realize I'm skipping all over the place, but I want to also plug really quickly. People, if you're listening to this, please follow the Valley Community Foundation on Facebook, because I love your Facebook page. Because like I said, this is definitely one of the backbone organizations in the Valley. And the Facebook page is very informative. If you want to know what the VCF does and the type of funding streams that are available, it's a good job there. And it's interesting because a lot of it is you're talking about the funds where some of these grants come from. You get the stories behind the families from here in the Valley that created these funds. And as someone, I've lived up here, I think now for 20 years at this point, which makes me brand new, of course. The history is really something. So people should follow VCF on Facebook. Now, is there anything else, Valerie, that we haven't touched upon that you want to stress before we call it a day here on Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy podcast?
The last grant process that I have not yet shared, Eugene, and I think it's important because, as you talked about this before, of events being canceled, is our sponsorship category. If you are having an event and you are doing it either online or in person in the coming months ahead, we would hopefully ask that you would submit the application if you know when your event is going to be, at least 60 days in advance, to give us some time to review it and to explore it. But again, there is funding available through that. And last but not least, we have partnered, as you know, with the Valley United Way, the Valley Chamber, and the Valley Council for Health and Human Services to put together the Valley the Valley Response and COVID Response and Recovery Fund. It is such a mouthful. I never get it right ever.
The COVID fund.
So I apologize. It's the COVID-19 fund.
Response and recovery. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you, Eugene. And basically, there is still funding available for organizations that are impacted by COVID-19. The focus right now is on vaccination awareness, vaccination support. But if there is something, a new need that your organization has come up with that is related specifically to pandemic response and recovery, please get in touch with us, because we are considering those on a case-by-case basis as well. So those are the two other grant opportunities that are available. The COVID Response and Recovery Grant is also on a rolling basis. And as Eugene has said, I can't thank all of the donors to that fund, to all of the funds that we have at VCF enough for believing in us, trusting us with the obviously getting all of this funding out to people who really need it the most. And it really speaks volumes that there are just so many people out there who have given so generously of their time and self. And soon, Eugene, as you know, The Great Give is right around the corner. And even though it's not specifically about grants, the money that comes in the door helps us get more grants out the door to help those in need. So, keep that in mind. And I know Eugene does a fabulous job with the Great Give every year. And so those are my two things. Thank you to everyone who is supporting the Community Foundation, the nonprofits, all of the work that is going on with the emergency services people and the healthcare workers here in the Valley. You all are doing an amazing job, and we're so very fortunate and blessed to be partnering with you. And thank you to Eugene for having me on.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. I mean, anytime. And just if anybody doesn't know, the Great Give is a 36-hour fundraiser, usually happens in early May, and you can support the nonprofit of your choice in the lower Naugatuck Valley and beyond. It's really grown into something that's huge, and it's just a lot of fun too. I really love the Great Give. So, all right, Valerie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the broadcast, and please don't hesitate to reach out anytime the Valley Indy can help spread the word, because the organization does a lot of good. So thank you.
Thanks, Eugene.
Okay, like I said, VCF does a ton of good in the Naugatuck Valley. That fact cannot be denied. Second half of this broadcast, so I covered a meeting the other night. I believe it was Monday, whatever day that was. I'm recording this February 9th. It was the Ansonia Tax Board, the Board of Apportionment and Taxation. I wrote a story. If you go to valleyindy.org and check out the homepage, political spat over Ansonia Tax Board's composition. My first paragraph read, the two city Democrats said the composition of the city's tax board violates the Ansonia City Charter, while a Republican alderman said the problem is that Democrats don't want to get involved. So that sets the plate for the story, sets the table, I guess is the better expression. And this is the audio from that meeting. I think it's about 8 minutes long, just a public session where this debate a limited debate breaks out about the composition of the Ansonia Tax Board, just playing it as a source material for a story I wrote. And other than that, I will talk to you next week.
Okay. Public session. Anybody from the public wishing to speak? Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Final call.
Mr. Cassetti, I have my hand up. I'm sorry. I didn't know you wanted that verbally. My apologies on that one.
Go right ahead. Who's speaking?
Thank you.
Name?
John, I'm sorry. Go ahead. John Fettern, 63 Hubble Avenue.
Okay.
Board of Apportionment and Taxation is one of the most important boards that the city can have. And the membership should be representative of the city at large and be apolitical in the best interest of its residents. According to the city charter, section 38, the Board of Apportionment and Taxation is to consist of 7 members appointed by the mayor and with the approval of the Board of Aldermen. Those 7 members are supposed to be divided equally between the 2 leading political parties and include at least one unaffiliated voter. And all vacancies on the board are supposed to be filled from the political party which the vacancy occurs by nomination by the mayor and confirmation by the Board of Aldermen. Currently, the City Ansonia website lists 7 members currently on the BOAT. The 5 in today's rolls call, Michael Smerznak and Domenico Filippone. However, per the minutes of every meeting since April last year, there have been only 5 members included in the roll call, indicating that these men are no longer part of the board. So of the 5 members that are included in the roll call, there are currently 3 Republicans, 1 Democrat, and 1 whose affiliation is not indicated, which is not really germane to this discussion. So I have the following questions for the board. Are there indeed only 5 boat members? Are Mr. Smerznak and Mr. Filippone still members of the board or not, as indicated on the city website? If there are only 5 members, why haven't the vacancies been filled since they became vacant last year? Under the current composition, those seats are to be filled by Democrats according to the charter, and no one from the administration has reached out to the Democratic Town Committee for recommendations, as is the normal procedure. We would be eager to provide said recommendations to the mayor to get the board back to 7 members. And I assume that you are, but I just wanted to ask if this board was comfortable operating knowing that it is in violation of the city charter. It's supposed to have 7 members and you have 5. So wanted to throw that out to you and see if there was any response.
Good question. It sounds like that should be a question that's given to the Board of Aldermen, no? I mean, we can answer the one, but that's a question about boat pertaining to the city charter. Boat deals with budgetary items, financial items. So that's not a budgetary or financial item. So I don't think that's something we can answer. That'd have to go to the alderman, right?
Yeah.
So there it is.
If I may follow up, can you at least confirm that the 5 people on this call and the roll call are the only 5 members of vote? I think you guys could do that probably for me.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, it's Alderman Malone. If I could just remind you, public session is not a question and answer session.
Right. Okay, is there anything else?
Well,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Federer. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes, I'd like to speak, actually. This is Dan King, Alderman.
Mr. King, go ahead.
In regards to the membership of vote, we have had a lot of people from Democratic Party in town just constantly oppose everything that's been done, but very few have actually offered their services as far as becoming members, serving on different boards. They all want to be top management. They want to be aldermen, they want to be mayor, they want to be everything. So when we go to fill these lower positions, which are very important because it's in the chain of command, we're just not seeing it. So if a Democrat in this town has the will and the desire to serve, let it be known. I said it when I was chairman of vote several times. I actually specifically asked civic leaders and people and many Democrats who are outspoken. I asked if they'd like to join. They always declined. So I find it funny that people are saying, well, there's not Democratic representation, but nobody from the Democratic side has offered their services. These positions are open and we would welcome their help. I don't think anybody on the Board of Aldermen would not approve their position if they came forward and said they wanted to help. So who wants to take these 2 positions? Please submit your name, your information, and your ability, your time to do this rather than just complain about it. Thank you.
Dan, just one quick note. I know most of us know who you are, but I didn't hear your address for the public record. If you wouldn't mind just stating it for the record.
Dan King.
Dan, are you still there? Well, we know where his address is anyway.
I have it. I can include it.
I know. I like to be technical.
Okay. Make sure anybody else from the public wishing to speak?
Mr. I'd like to speak.
Name, address?
Sure. Brian Perkins, 6 West Road.
Okay.
So just a couple things to go off of what Alderman King had to say. As the interim chairman of the Ansonia DTC, we have several members that are interested in joining BOAT and actually getting the board to being in line with the charter and being legal by the charter standards. So, whatever means we have to go through to get those people in front of the mayor, so to speak, we're more than happy to help, and I'm more than happy to get those people in front of the mayor. And also I'd like to touch on Alderman Moan's comments, as he's not a appointed official of BOAT, so he should not be speaking outright and telling you guys how to do your job at this kind of meeting. I feel like that's very inappropriate. Furthermore, I do have a question, I guess, it's not a Q&A session, but
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding. TV sucking ideas from our head. Public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. Our readers are in the opens each day. Online clickbait, a prurient way. It's free information here to stay. Not even hookers give it away. Advertising, metastasizing, newsroom shrinking, constant attrition. We'll ride the dinosaur. We'll ride the dinosaur. Dinosaur. Deadlines, bylines, pictures too. Editorial comment for a buck or two. Fire down the block, the murder next door. And now we wonder what it's all for. Social media coming free to you, funny pages, the mayor's wages, criminal seats, corruption schemes, ink state wretches asking tough questions. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. The presses are running all through the night. We're printing the truth with all of our might. We're platform agnostics, got that interweb too. Buy an ad, see what we can do. We still have subscribers, still have our fans. We're here every day, so give us a chance or we're making our stand. Just hold us in your hand, and we'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur.